All right, let's tackle one of those questions that seems to pop up all the time for developers, no matter how long you've been coding. What is the actual difference between a library and a framework? We're going to settle it once and for all using a really simple analogy.
So let's just get right into it. You hear these terms all the time, right? React, jQuery, Angular, Vue. Some are libraries, some are frameworks. And yeah, they both help you build stuff, but they are fundamentally different in how they work. So what's the big secret?
Well, instead of just throwing a bunch of code at you, we're going to do something different. We're stepping away from the keyboard and into the kitchen. Because believe it or not, the best way to get this is with a story.
And our story is the tale of two kitchens. Now, in this story, you are the talented chef, and you're going to work in two completely different environments. The thing you really need to pay attention to is who's in charge in each kitchen.
First up, let's imagine you're in your own kitchen. This is your space. You know where everything is. Your favorite knife, the good pan, it's all exactly where you want it. You are the absolute master of this domain. In your kitchen, you have total creative freedom. You wake up and think, I'm making spaghetti carbonara today. You choose the pasta, you decide when the water boils, when the guanciale gets crispy, every single decision, every step, that's all you.
Okay, but let's say you're making the sauce and you kind of forget the perfect egg-to-cheese ratio. No problem. You just reach over to your shelf and you grab a cookbook. That cookbook, that's your library. It's just a collection of recipes or tools that you can use whenever you feel like you need them. You're still in charge.
And this is the most important part right here. You call the library. Your main recipe is your code. And when you need to do something specific, like, say, make an API call with Axios, you just reach into your toolbox and pull out that specific tool. You start the action. All right, time for a scene change. Now imagine you've been invited to cook in a world-famous 3 Michelin star kitchen. It's run by a legendary master chef. The second you walk in the door, you know, things are going to be very, very different here. See, in this kitchen, there's a system for everything. A rigid, pre-established system. You don't just grab any old bowl. You have to use the specific prep bowls. You don't decide when to sear the steak. A timer goes off. Someone yells, "Chef, time to sear." The kitchen's workflow tells you what to do. This whole kitchen system, the layout, the rules, the timing, all of it, that's the framework. It's this pre-built structure that already has a way of doing things. You don't build the kitchen from scratch. You just bring your skills and plug them into the stations that are already there. And here is the big reversal. The framework is in control. It calls your code. Think about a framework like React or Vue. You write your components, those are like your little recipes, but the framework is the one that decides when to show them, when to update them, and when to get rid of them. It's all based on its own internal logic. So after our little story about the two kitchens, it all comes down to one single question, the one thing that truly separates a library from a framework. And it's all about who's in charge. Let's just boil it all down, shall we? In your kitchen with a library, you call the shots. You call the library when you need it. But in the master chef's kitchen with a framework, the system calls the shots. The framework calls you. It's a complete flip in who's in command. You know, this whole idea has a fancy name in software engineering. This is the big aha moment. It's called inversion of control. And that's the core principle of a framework. The control that you would normally have is inverted. It's handed over to the framework itself. Okay, just to make sure this concept is really locked in, let's use one more super quick metaphor. If a library is like your personal cookbook, you can also think of it as a toolbox. A framework, though, that's more like the entire blueprint for a house. So let's just put it all together on one screen. A library is your toolbox. You are in charge, and you pick up a tool whenever you need it. A framework is the blueprint. It's in charge, defining the structure, and you just build your stuff inside its walls. So why does any of this actually matter? Well, you choose a library when you want total flexibility, when you want to be in the driver's seat and design the whole architecture yourself. You choose a framework when you want to get going fast with a really structured, opinionated system that already has a lot of best practices built right in. So if you remember nothing else from this, remember this. A library is a toolbox. A framework is the blueprint and the foundation. One gives you tools to use, the other gives you the whole structure to build on top of. But, and this is maybe the most important takeaway of all, these two things, they aren't enemies. They're not mutually exclusive. In fact, most of the time, they work together. Just because you're working in that big, structured framework kitchen doesn't mean you can't bring in your favorite cookbook. I mean, a perfect everyday example is using a library like Axios for fetching data inside a framework like React. The framework handles the overall structure, and the library comes in to do one specific job really well. They're partners. So the real question isn't library or framework. It's more like which libraries work best with my framework.